Lonely women make good lovers, sings the man on the country station. But that's not how I remember loneliness. Mostly too drunk to feel anyone's pleasure. And the next morning, that pitiful kinship of distance. Except for the night he couldn't finish it. Not in the meadow, not in his truck, until finally we stumbled through the blue light of his shared living room, because at the least he needed some place to put my hunger to bed. In the morning, he thought to make the misadventure right, while I looked out the window, examining the scars on the glass, bird shit, a feather, unbroken blue sky. The same way I look down at my hands now, everything so plain, even my pain, which I thought anyone could see. Thank you so much for having me here, Sean. It's really a wonderful pleasure to be in this beautiful place and to get to come back to Minnesota, where I did a lot of my growing up and haven't had a chance to return to for a while. I'm going to read some new poems. That last poem was a new poem. And I'm also going to read some poems from my most recent book, All Its Charms. This one is called Still Life with Nursing Bra. Fall open, unfold me, hook and eye undone with one hand, fingers that know their way now in the dark. You contain me, underwire circling my breasts and half bangle, like the copper bracelets, lemniscating wrists of women who've never worn bras, never held back their multitudes. You of the hidden crabapple bruise yellowing on my chest. You of her ecstasy, eyes rolled back in her head, hands in her sweat-damp hair. You, milk that rivers down my skin, shimmering of hunger, the want of a wet mouth. Nursing bra. Black, nude, electric orange and lace-trimmed, tucked in the back of the drawer or hung dangling from a doorknob. I once fumbled with you, stale of the dentist lobby, cut by a thin mewling that made us all shiver. The waiting room's terrified ripple as I struggled with the class that kept me from spilling open. Instead, the leaking through. A sticky flower blooming down my chest until I wrenched you free, flapping and fearless, one wing taking flight from my breast. When I was working on this last book, I had a lot of concerns about like who wants to read these poems about like a white mom. Boring, super boring. Who wants to read about diapers? Who wants to read about baby food? That's what these poems felt like to me. And it took readers outside myself looking at these poems to make me feel and recognize that they were about so much more. We were talking in workshop today about obsessions, and one of the things that I think about with obsessions too is that they can work as doorways, right? It's something that that we can offer our readers as a way to enter the poem, and it's a way for us to open up the world and unlock the world and enter the poem as well. So this is a poem that has a baby in it, as many of the poems in this book do. But I wouldn't say I wouldn't say anywhere that it's about a baby. The baby is just the door. Getting the baby to sleep. Sometimes the baby can't reconcile the self with the self. Too hungry to eat, too tired to sleep. I know the feeling. Oh, America, on those nights when you are too beautiful for me to continue to forgive you any longer, for allowing us to kill each other with your graceless bullets, or exile our neighbors across the fences of your fictitious border, or argue over the ownership of each young girl's body as if its freedom is a lie she must stop telling herself. Then, America, I go out into your radiant arms. The baby and I drive through your streets, over the bridge and its light-chipped waters, under a moon so big, so full of itself that though I know it belongs to the world, it can't be anything but American. I hang my arm out the window and skim the air like touching skin. I breathe you in, and the baby sleeps. Last week, I was in Michigan, in a little town on the shore of Lake Michigan, actually, which is something that I do every summer. I live in Montana with my family, but we go back every summer to see my cousins, my aunts and uncles, all my extended family who live there. And it is both an experience that I'm grateful for and that also often really challenges me. The Great Lakes. My wife, the one I thought I'd never have. Because does any of us believe we deserve to be happy in this life? Lets my daughter paint her toenails a sloppy silver as my aunt smokes a second cigarette and pages through photos on her phone so I can see how the car looked after my cousin wrecked it last month in a past midnight field near the poultry processing plant, just a half mile from Grandma's unsold house. High on meth or heroin, or maybe not high at all, but fighting her hunger. While I pick through this dead girl's jewelry, just as starved for something to hold on to as those feckless gulls pecking the sand a few feet away. The sun is shining brighter than the gold-plated necklace I fasten around my neck and swear to wear forever. And even though scientists are finding nicotine in the water and oxy in the muscles, my cousin's kids are down there at the edge of the beach, screaming their heads off with the pure joy of plunging below the surface. It's hard not to feel good watching the waves. But my aunt needs me to believe in the glass, in the blood, in her daughter's body, a thing unidentifiable, a thing none of us had really seen in years. She needs me to understand that her pain is water as far as the eye can see. So the last book was about my wife, or my daughter. The next book is about my wife. But she teases me about that because in almost all the poems that she appears in, she's asleep. And that's because I never have time to write except in the middle of the night. And so she appears, softly snoring next to me. So I'm going to read you guys a wife poem, but she's awake in this one. The rats. They come home with our daughter because there's no one at school to feed them on the weekends. They are mates, and like all true companions, they are devoted and they bite. We set their cage on a kitchen table and wait for the weekend to end. for our girl to fall asleep so we can talk about God, while the rats lick the silver ball that delivers the water one drop at a time. There are so many points on which you and I disagree. The value of a clean counter, the purpose of parent-teacher conferences, what warrants a good cry, or calling you a name so cruel I make myself whisper it through my teeth. God is the least of it. When I think I'm so angry I could hit you in the face, you turn yours to me with a look of disbelief. The rats, meanwhile, have turned up the volume. Tick, tick, says the silver ball as their teeth click against it, thirsty as ever, thirstier still at night when the darkness wakes them. And during the day, when they're curled together in their flannel hammock, head to tail, two furry apostrophes possessing nothing but each other, paws pressed together as if in prayer, to what gods do they prostrate themselves then? God of fidelity, God of forgiveness. I lied when I said I didn't believe. Ooh, even me, the coldest of heart, to turn away from a sea parted, bread that multiplies to answer need, water transformed to the sweetest wine, the kind that tastes better for each year it's been left in the barrel. I'm going to read one more new poem and then the last poem from the book. Ross and I are going to have our craft talk in a couple of days, and Ross mentioned this morning that he's going to talk about magic, which I think is great because a lot of my recent poems make use of magical realism, and I think there are the intersections in my life that I'm really interested in digging into. I'm interested in digging into the pieces of my identity that maybe don't easily fit together, that don't make a simple narrative. And I've discovered that one of the ways that I can investigate those intersections within myself is with magic. The magician of the woodpile. The blue tarp is covered in little pools of water that shimmer like sequins. Everywhere a wrinkle has gathered. I pull it off with a flourish and start digging through the kindling and logs until I find the dicks. All of them hidden in the back of the pile. The dicks I took in my mouth. The dicks that didn't ask permission. The dicks I loved and the dicks I never really knew. I remember holding them in my hands, how soft the skin, how various the shapes, and cooing to each one, "You're the most beautiful dick I've ever seen," as if wonder were the only register my voice could work in. Now I stack the wood the way the dicks must have learned at camp, with the kindling at the bottom and the big logs on top. I add the dicks last with a little pink crown of thorns, and I light the whole thing on fire. I expect to see spiders come running out, rats even. I expect to hear screams, but there's nothing, just a fire making me warm. Even as the sun goes down at my back, everything but my face is in darkness, like I'm performing a magic trick, like a magic trick with me. The black one is my daughter's favorite song. She doesn't know about it. She's in it. Hold yourself. When my daughter spills her orange juice, I wipe it off the linoleum with the old bad boxers, the man I thought I elastic down, seams unraveling, but lives already. At night, they crawl across my skin. We spend all these years wanting, and then one day, sudden as a lamp set to a timer, we have. There were the nights I drank just so I could feel a little more of my own unhappiness. Now, with my feet pressed into this rug, I'll never be that drunk again. Before I went to the clinic to get pregnant, I cried onto the shoulder of an old flame, worried that whoever I loved next would never know my body when it was beautiful. How could I have been wrong about so many things? Thank you.